welcome back to Unfiltered Journeys
I'm
podcast.
Karina.
And I'm Lisandra. We're your hosts.
Yeah, it is a beautiful day, as you can tell. We had to be out here today.
My
It's
goodness.
just gorgeous.
First official day of summer. How
Crazy.
exciting.
And it's a hot day on top of that.
I know. So we gotta get this done and recorded before that sun is right above us.
So today we have a special episode. We're actually following up our third episode where we were talking and ended with body disassociation, right? When you go through trauma. So we decided to kind of keep going with that theme and go into our fourth episode and share with you guys a little bit about our stories and where that disassociation comes from, but also how we were able to overcome it and heal it, and still healing it in some ways, but we wanted you to know a little bit more about that experience.
We working on it. Okay, let's do our quick prayer real fast.
Yes.
You could lead today.
All right, God, you know.
Okay.
All right. I can feel it. Like, I just, felt something, and I'm like, oh.
Ooh, conviction.
I felt it. Like, he's like, no, I felt I don't know, something. I'm like, okay, you're ready.
I'm
Let's
excited. Well, we hope this message reaches whoever it is supposed to reach. So yeah, let's get right into it. Why do you feel now is the time for you to start speaking about it and getting the message out there?
Well, for me personally, I feel like I've grown and healed to a point where I can not comfortably, but speak on it without really the shame that was attached to what I went through has somewhat been, removed. I think at times it just depends who I'm talking to too, I think when I feel comfortable with somebody I can share, but I feel like now is the time just because I think God's aligning me with everything that feels to me like I'm supposed to be doing and my purpose. And I think about a lot how I was young and in high school and lost and felt like nobody understood me and felt like nobody knew what I was going through. Nobody could understand. And it was this feeling of neglection, rejection, not being wanted, not being important, not being worthy. And that really did take a toll on me, and it took a toll on the way I see myself, the way that I basically believed in myself too, because I feel like now I believe in myself more than ever, and I was still this person years ago, but it was I needed to go through that pruning, I feel like, in order to fully come out. And God wanted me to use this story one day to hopefully inspire someone and also glorify him and show you guys that if he did it for me, he could do it for you. And I think that's the season that I'm in, is just really telling people listen, if God got me through all of that, whatever you're going through, he can definitely help you and get you through that too. You're not alone,
Right. Because everybody has their story. Everybody has their trauma. So whatever it is, it might not be exactly what either of us have experienced, but it should be something that still is going to resonate with you guys, because we all have our things. We all have our things that we have to heal from and that we carry with us throughout our lives.
Yep. And that's the thing that we forget sometimes. It's we all have a story, you know what I mean? And I think if you learn to just be graceful with one another, you tend to understand why people are a certain way.
And we actually spoke about this. I feel like we're always remembering something that we spoke about in another episode, but we briefly touched on it before, where you were saying that if you just take the time to actually talk to somebody, you take the time to actually get to know them, then you would start to see and maybe even understand a little bit, empathize a little bit with why they might act the way they act at certain moments, or why they might think or feel the way that they do. And you can start to humanize them, instead of just judging them. So why do you feel that your testimony and really anybody's testimony is important?
Well, recently, I feel like I've understood the importance of our testimonies, and it's been through Bible study and just like getting closer to God. But,
That'll
God,
do it.
right, God calls us, and not only God, but Jesus literally calls us to tell our stories, right? He tells us to go out there and tell your friends and your family what the Lord has done for you, right? And I feel like sometimes when we live in secrecy, like we give power to whatever it is that happened to us, when we kind of hold it to ourselves, like we give it this power that God wants us to remove.
Right. Like there's shame in it.
Exactly.
We're giving it that like control over us, right? Like for me, for many years, I was so ashamed of telling people what I went through because I didn't want them to judge me. I didn't want them to look at me different or treat me differently, or I don't know how they would use it against me, which we said this before. But also, I think part of it was protecting the people that did things that they did, because I was afraid of what they would do if I ever said anything. So
Mm-hmm.
God kind of just removed that, as I went through this journey with him of healing and being obedient and listening to exactly what it is that he needed me to do. And it was not easy. I think it was probably like the hardest thing I've ever like had to do in my life is be obedient to God and like really trust him that like he was going to be the one that's going to take care of me. Because I wasn't used to being taken care of. So now I'm putting my full trust on him, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. But, my testimony is not just mine, but anyone else's. The moment I decided to really start telling people, I felt like I got my voice back, my power back. And I was like, okay, like the real me can come out because this is part of me. This is a part of me that I can't deny.
Right.
This is
It's
something.
definitely shaped and molded our lives just like anybody's trauma,
Right.
to some extent.
Right. So it's like me not being open about that felt like I was like in a way rejecting that part of my life or that part of me or that person that I was during that time. And one thing my therapist would say to me all the time is like we have to embrace all of us, like all of our seasons, all of our like good,
Agreed.
bad, ugly, and just own
I
it
was
and
about to say
embrace it,
exactly that.
you know?
The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I feel like once you do embrace your story, your testimony, and you release it and you let it out there, that's really what happens. And not only that, but you're telling people of what God did in your life. And a lot of people need to hear that they're not alone in this battle, and that there's a God that's looking over them and putting his hand over their lives. And you just have to trust him and seek him.
Right. And I do feel as though that speaking about the things that we've been through and kind of giving our stories up for somebody else to use, it shows you how much you can transform, how much God can transform your situation and take something that was horrible and use it for
Good.
someone else's glory at some point.
Or even use it for our own good. We just said it
Yes,
shaped us and molded us
100%.
to be who we are today. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So now I guess we're on to the nitty gritty part of the episode.
Where do you feel your redemption story begins?
Well, for me, it started very, very young. My earliest memories, you know, um, is when I was like, I think it was 6 years old. So I was born in Honduras, came here at six turning seven to live with my family. Um, and it was a big change. Obviously, new country, new language, blah 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 blah. So I came here and I was exposed to different people. Different people that I wasn't used to living with. So, um, as I came here and got comfortable with certain family members, they used that as a way in to start doing inappropriate things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember like my very first memory was like of this person like teaching me how to dance, which I always loved, by the way. I always loved dancing and music and singing. And I remember like
It heals the soul.
It does, you know. And my mom was at the time very big on like Christian music too. And there was this one artist that I would hear all the time when I was younger. And I was just listening to her stuff, and I was in my room and I was doing my thing, you know, 6 years old. You're just oblivious of who's around. And this person like was there and came in and was like, oh, like, let me teach you like some moves, right? So it's something that started innocently, but then led to things as such as the sexual abuse that I went through as a child, you know. And I think that's the correct term for it, right? Sexual abuse. And like eventually as I got older, it did turn to rape, you know. And it was like, it took me some time to like process the two, because like I never liked saying the word rape until I started going to therapy, and I like was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, that's literally what happened to me, you know. But it was a term that I was like, no, like, you know, like,
Right,
I
yes.
can't, like, nah, like, no. But it was that. It was just, I was like groomed from such a young age to like make it seem like that wasn't that, but it was totally that. So that's really where my story starts. You know, it was something, again, that started innocently, where this person started to inappropriately touch me. And it went on for years, up to the point where I became a teenager, right? So now I'm a teenager. I know a little bit more what's happening, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of like, wait, is this normal? Like, I don't think this is supposed to be something that I'm supposed to be exposed to.
You're starting to question and realize.
Right. So like I started to like get angry about it too, because it's like why is this happening to me? Like, why is nobody doing anything about it? Like who do I tell? And at this point, the person realized that too. So it was more of like, oh, if you say something, so and so is gonna happen, and if you do something, X and Y and Z is gonna happen. So then what are you gonna do about it? And it was like that, like, manipulation that like made me fearful, you know what I mean? And they used that manipulation for years to get me to be silent, because it was always like, well, what are you gonna do, and who's gonna believe you, you know? And I grew up like feeling hopeless, because I'm like, who is gonna believe me, you know? I never said anything, and I don't know if it's gonna be believable, like, you know. And when I became a teenager, I started being more rebellious. I started acting out more because I was frustrated, obviously, with the things that I was going through, and like nobody like seeing it. That I started just like just kind of like releasing my anger, you know, and like lashing out. So then at that point it was like, yeah, who is gonna believe me? Because I'm out here like, I look like the disobedient, angry child right now, you know?
It's just also not something that is widely spoken about.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it is one of those things. You see it on TV, you see it in movies and TV shows where people are not being believed.
Right.
You know, and they have to go through this entire craziness to even get the story out there, and still not believed even after it. So it is one of those things that is difficult to have a conversation about, for sure.
It is. And you know, I think like now I'm a teenager, right? And I knew of God. I was raised in church. So at this point now, like, that I'm aware, okay, this is not right. This isn't supposed to be happening. Like, now I'm realizing like I'm actually like going through something like that's not supposed to be happening to me. And I started questioning God. So that's really when my encounter with God started happening.
That's what I was about to ask you.
Because literally I started questioning him, and I was like, how are you allowing this to happen? Like, if you're God, you know, like, you're supposed to look after me, you're supposed to like make sure I'm okay. Like, everything that I've learned about you, or everything that I know about you, says that I'm not supposed to be going through this, right?
And so, I feel as though questioning God, so many people look at that as, you're such a horrible Christian, you're such a horrible person, how could you question the Almighty?
Right.
I feel like that's how you start the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
We don't have to maybe completely understand each other, just start a conversation with each other. And then the more the conversation happens, the more you speak to him, then the more you start to understand.
Right. And that's really when I started encountering him, you know, because when these things would happen, you know, usually it would be like, you know, at gatherings or somebody creeping and, you know, they creeped into my room or something. And then it was like after the fact, me kind of being in my room by myself in the dark and just literally looking up at God and being like, what the heck? Like, what the heck just happened? And like, how are you not stopping it? And, you know, just really getting my anger out at him. I think really it was just me like crying like into my pillow and releasing, like crying into my pillow. You know what I mean? Like just releasing it and telling him like, I am so upset with you. Like, you're supposed to be my protector and you're not protecting me. And it was in those encounters, in that moment of anger and that moment of frustration, that like I'm about to didn't want to,
We
but
didn't bring tissues.
I know. But it was in those moments that I literally would hear God. And he would just tell me, like, you know, like, believe and trust that this is not always going to be like this. You know, like, I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to find a way for you. And as a kid, you know, that's hard to believe, right? Because you're believing something unseen, right? You're believing in something you don't see, but I very much felt. So it was like, you know, it was that frustration of when is it going to end? When is it going to stop? When are you going to do something about it? So it was me building this relationship with God literally at the age of 13 all the way till, you know, I was like 17, 18, where I started to trust the visions that God would give me. Like, I would get a lot of visions of just like a certain lifestyle. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but he would always tell me, you have so much to live for, so much to live for, so much to live for. Just like wait on it, right? And
Is this where you feel like things started to kind of change for you a little bit?
I started to get braver, yeah. Like, the more that I connected with God and the more I started to see him, like, in my life at that point. Like, I started working for Chase and I got a really good position. I got a full-time job. And I was like, okay, like, he's setting me up for something. And like, you know, at that point, I was already 19, right? So at this point, I was like, God, I'm going to trust you, that I'm going to take this leap of faith. You put me in this position, you gave me this opportunity, and I need a way out. Because if I don't get out, I don't know what's going to happen to me. That's kind of like how I felt. Like, I needed to leave at that point because it was like from 6 to 19, like, I can't take this anymore. And 19, right. I'm already an adult. Like, you know, I've had to grow up faster than usual 19-year-olds. So, like, I was already consciously like, I can't stay in this environment. So I decided to take the leap of faith and I decided to move out at 19. And I decided to, like, tell my, you know, family what was going on. And sadly, they were not believing me, you know, from the start. It was like they had to get confirmation before they truly believed my story. But at that point, I didn't care because I was on my way out. So I was like, I'm leaving. You could take it or leave it, but I'm not the rebellious child. I'm not the angry child. I'm a good child. I'm a good person. I'm this, I'm that. And the reason why I was doing X, Y, and Z is because this person was doing these things to me for X amount of years, you know. And nobody did anything about it. Nobody protected me from it. Nobody was there for me. And you all allowed it to happen. And I'm leaving that behind, you know. And I moved out and I was like, I never like wanted to look back.
You kind of started the process of like washing your hands from this and everything.
And then I moved out and I lived by myself, you know. And after that point, I did end up going back home because financially I was like, all right, living by yourself is a lot. But I did it,
especially as a teenager.
Yeah, I did it for a year and I promised myself, like, in a year, I'm like, that's it, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. And I did it, and I'm like so proud because I've never looked back, you know. After that, going back, first of all, such an ego like burst right there, because you're just like, yeah, I'm
really
moving
is.
out. No, girl, I had to go back home and go through hell again for
That
a
happens
year.
to pretty much everybody, especially when you're out here in the Northeast.
Yeah. So, but you know, I never moved back, and thank God, like, you know, he blessed me with an amazing husband who was my boyfriend throughout the whole time, from 16 on, and then he, you know, blessed me with the home. He blessed me with investments. He blessed me with travel. He blessed me with friends. He's blessed me with, you know, like healing resources like therapy and the right therapist that helped me get so far in my healing process. So
Snaps for hubby,
I
such a
look
good
right.
name.
I know, seriously. But like all of that, and you know, when I go on these trips sometimes, or when I'm just reflecting, it comes to me and it's like, damn, God, sorry I cursed, but you really did tell me to wait. You know, you really did tell me I had a life to look forward to and I had so much to live for, and now I'm like seeing that, you know, in fruition, you know. And it's like, it's time to move on from those things. It's time to let that hurt, that guilt, just everything that comes with that, just like put it in the past, because this is a new chapter, this is a new life that we're building, you know. And I don't want to have to carry all that anymore. So that's why I'm releasing it to all of you guys.
How do you feel like your testimony has impacted the people around you?
Well, obviously, the people that are still in my life, it has impacted them. And, you know, I get a lot of, like, you know, from close friends, from my husband. They're just very proud that I've come this long way. They've seen me and seen all parts of me, you know, and they are extremely proud, and they're so happy to see this version of Karina that's healthy, that's happy, that's confident with herself, that is fully starting to like see her worth, you know. And the ones that are not in my life are the ones that they just weren't ready to let go of those things, you know. In the past, they weren't ready to like move on from it, or they weren't ready to acknowledge, you know. Like, I don't talk to my family, I don't talk to my parents, because there's this thing, I feel like, sometimes in the Latino community where we can't just own up to it and say like X, Y, and Z happened, and I should have been there for you, I should have protected you, I should have watched over you. Instead, it's like, let's not talk about it, and let's pretend like we're this big happy family, and we just won't ever be like, you know, speak of this again. But I can't live in that delusion. That's not the truth, you know. And that's not what I want for me or my kids or anybody else, because I'm gonna break that.
That really is such an unfortunate reality for a lot of people in the Latino community, for sure. That our grandparents, our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents, everybody just never spoke about it.
Right.
You know, and so you have these, you're carrying these generational traumas on instead of working through them and healing through them and,
Right.
and all of that. So,
And not passing it on to the next one, you know. And that's what I don't want. I just never would want that for my kids. Like, you know, I want to be very open, like, you know, when they're ready, very open, and tell them again why my story matters, you know. And one way to bring awareness to them, to always come to me if something like that were to happen, and build that trust between us, but also to show them like what God did in my life, you know. Like, I've thought about that, like how I would tell them, but I'm not gonna hide it from them, because it doesn't do any justice for them to like not understand what as parents we've had to go through, you know, in a way that's not going to traumatize them, but it's going to teach them and show them all the like the things that we'd had to overcome and what we relied on, which was our faith, you know, and our strength and our families and our friends, like why those things are important, you know. I don't know if that makes sense.
no, it does. And kind of how you can get through it.
Right.
You know, like teaching them
to
this
rely
is how
on
to
your
move.
people, you know.
Exactly.
Like, I think we grew up relying on ourselves, and that can be lonely, and it's a lot of pressure on you to like have to figure everything out. And I think now I'm learning that, like, if you have the right people, you have the right village around you, it's okay to lean on to others, you know?
For sure, definitely. Now we'll get into my story.
Ooh, the tea.
Let's move up again a little bit, or at
All right.
least like over a little bit, because the sun is starting to
It's
creep
hitting you.
in. Yes, girl. Now we'll get into my story a little bit here. I'm not going to go too deep in depth about the story exactly. I'll speak more on how it affected me, the things that I had to experience because of the trauma, and kind of how I healed from it. We did do videos of this as well.
Yes.
On our Unfiltered Journeys podcast
Yes.
pages. So go ahead and take a look at those. Obviously, go like, love, show your support. But for me, I was assaulted by a family member as a child. I also experienced assault as an adult as well. So it was one of those things where, and I feel like I've heard it before and I never really understood it, but how somebody has been traumatized in a certain way gets re-traumatized, and you kind of keep seeing the patterns.
Okay.
And I definitely put myself in situations that were not the best and were not the safest, probably because I've experienced that as a kid.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Fortunately for me, I will say, when the assault happened, I went completely mute, pretty much. And I'm a child, like, I've had ADHD since I was a kid. I used to be off the walls, bouncing, going crazy. So when the assault did happen, I went mute.
You shut down?
Shut down. My personality was so different, I pretty much stopped speaking. And thankfully, I have a pretty young mom. My mom had me when she was 17 for 2 days when she gave birth to me. So she did notice that pretty quickly and asked me. And for some reason, as a child, I just felt comfortable enough to say that. I do feel like I've always been somebody who is able to speak and say what's on my mind. I think that that's a gift that God has given me. It's not something that was repetitive for me as a child. However, like I said, I then did experience it again as an adult. And I think being sexually exposed so young forces you to grow up fast. It forces you to see things differently, see people differently, causes that body dissociation that we were speaking about before. And you lose your voice. You lose your ability to protect yourself. You lose all of the discernment that we are supposed to have. I feel as when you start experiencing traumas like that, it kind of goes out the window a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was using alcohol as a clutch from a young age. As a teenager, I was drinking and getting blackout drunk. Even as an adult, again, I was drinking, getting blackout drunk, and thinking it wasn't a problem because it wasn't something that I did so often. It's not like it was something that I am, you know what, now I'm going to just turn to alcohol anytime there's an issue.
Right.
No, but when I did drink, it was to all or nothing kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So
there was no limit.
Right. So I could tell that I was pretty much trying to forget things or trying to detach. And I used that as my escape from life throughout various moments of my life. And I was probably just picking partners that were emotionally unavailable because of my traumas. And when you feel like, okay, this is my worth, this is what I deserve, you start picking people who kind of support that belief and support that way of thinking, because then somebody comes in and then they're just loving and trying to support you and give you everything, and it's foreign to you.
Yeah.
So you kind of start to reject that a little bit and feel as though this isn't right. This isn't what I'm supposed to be experiencing because this doesn't feel normal.
Right.
Meanwhile, your normal was built in chaos.
Yes, it doesn't feel familiar.
Right. And because of my traumas and because of all of the pain that I had experienced and had to go through and had to kind of go through on my own because, yes, even though I had a mother who did recognize it very quickly, she put me in therapy, and I don't know if it was the therapy itself or if it was just my child traumatized brain protected me in a sense of making me forget the entire situation. So I actually forgot about it for years. I was having a lot of flashbacks of the incident itself. I was having a lot of flashbacks of this place, this building that I would go to and sit down, and there was toys around. And I just kept having these flashbacks. It was so weird. So I had finally asked my mother about it, and that was when she kind of got into it and explained everything to me, and everything came flooding back in.
And you remembered immediately.
And I just remembered everything, and all of the flashbacks that I was having kind of pieced together like a movie that I was just remembering that I had seen.
Oh, wow.
And so because of that, I pretty much was healing through pains that, again, I didn't remember, but my body remembered, and all of these things. And so because of that, because of all of the pain that I had to heal through alone, I always started to look at people, and I was, again, doing this even before remembering. I have always looked at people and seen their pain, but also understood their pain, and never looked at it as you're a horrible person, you're a bad person, you're this, you're that, or looked at the things that you're doing wrong necessarily. I looked at it always and thought, man, what this person must have been through.
Exactly.
What this person must have experienced.
Yeah, it's like as a result of what they've been through.
Right. And so I kind of always gave people passes and always loved people exactly as they were, even as at my expense, though. And that's what I felt like leading with love was. Always just loving, 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 never stopping that love.
Right.
And
to love yourself.
Not putting myself first.
Exactly.
Ever. But the thing is that God told us to guard your heart above all.
Yep.
So literally the most important thing that he thinks is that you should be guarding your heart and have the discernment, which again just kind of erased from my mind because I was always looking at people's traumas and looking at their pain, not necessarily knowing their traumas, but looking at the pain in their eyes and seeing that they're just hurt in some way.
Yep. And then that natural nurturing side of you wanting to take care of that. Yep. I can relate to that for sure.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
And so I've had always been a believer of God. I've always gone to church, all of these things. The reason I chose to start healing was when I got pregnant. Because for me, I instantly felt like I don't want to pass any traumas to my child. I don't want my traumas to affect my relationship with him in a way that causes him traumas. And I just kept feeling that so heavily. And so I'll try not to cry. I when I was pregnant with him, I felt like, okay, I have to heal. I have to get past this. I have to really put in the work and not just put a Band-Aid over it. Because if I traumatize my child, oh my goodness, my only goal in life is to raise a son that people's daughters don't have to heal from.
Yes.
And
amen to that, girl.
yes. So for me, that was really what kickstarted the entire journey. And kind of the perception that I took on it too was I can't ask God to use me. I can't ask him to use my story. I can't ask him to put me in purpose and then expect no challenges along the way.
Right.
Because healing is hard. It is not a linear thing. It is up and down all the time. I don't know that you're ever fully healed, to be honest. I just felt like I said, I can't ask him to do this and then expect absolutely no challenges. So I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to walk through this no matter what that journey looks like.
Right. It's a commitment. It's a decision that you decide to commit not only for yourself, but for your child, for the next generation that'll come from you, you know, whether that is your child or the people you mentor or the people around you, you know, you're impacting them in a way that people before them haven't. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. And so for me, the process of healing was, you know, going to therapy. It was getting closer to God. Even though I always had a relationship with God, it was starting to read my Bible more, starting to start my day listening to praise and worship music, or even just motivational speeches, because you tend to get, especially when you've experienced traumas again and you start to believe that you deserve certain things in life, you start to kind of drown yourself in those thoughts. So I started to listen to more motivational speeches, listen to things that let me know you're the shit. Okay, you're the shit. So get up and act like it, kind of a thing.
Right. Like empower you and
Exactly.
put respect on your name and who you are, and you know, all of that.
And kind of help you step into the purpose that God already has for you.
Yeah.
And also starting to guard my heart. That one's been, we've spoken about it before in other episodes, that one's been the hardest, and having to remove certain people and all of these things, because I did start to realize that if you push me to a certain point, if you are just coming at me or triggering me in a way that will bring out the old me, I really am going to mess up, and I'm going to mess up out loud. I'm going to mess up in front of everybody. So in order to avoid that, I have to start using my discernment. I have to start pulling myself away from people, because I can't allow other people to get those reactions out of me.
You can't allow them to have that power over you.
Exactly. So I just kind of felt like speaking about it and giving my story, and again, we spoke about this before, it felt like such a sense of relief. It felt like I'm releasing this and this no longer belongs to me, and our only intention and purpose here is to be able to reach somebody who has been through traumas, who has experienced things, and it doesn't have to be the same exact traumas that we've been through.
Right.
Everybody has experienced something, like we said in the beginning of the episode, and so we just encourage you guys to go and talk to whoever it is that you can find closest to you. If you want to email us, we'll put our email up actually. If you even want to email us your story, just so you can have somebody to speak to and to talk to, we can do that, and not even post it. This is not something that we would share, but it's good to have a community. It's good to have those people to release it to, because then once you release that, you can start to actually heal from that.
Amen. Yes, I agree 100%. I feel like the moment I started sharing with like my close friends, I've even shared it with, you know, a little bit with you, even at my job, you know, I have some coworkers that I'm really cool with. And just being able to share it is kind of just like, I don't know, it's liberating in a way, you know, because it's like, yep, that happened, and look at me now, like it's no longer has a hold on me anymore.
Exactly.
You know? That's kind of how I feel about it. So try it, you know, try it with us. Or maybe there's something that's been on your chest for a while that you're just like, I gotta get it out. Then maybe it's time you get it out with someone that you feel comfortable with, that makes you feel comfortable and safe, and maybe that person, you know, is the person you can tell it to. Whatever that is, you know.
If you feel like it's time to post it, whatever it is that you feel is heavy on your heart, just go out and do it, please, because it really does kickstart this whole journey. And I think us sitting here and being able to speak so openly about this and everything is kind of proof that God will really heal you and pull you through some shit. Sorry, but it is just true. It's a reality. Like, we go through some crazy stuff in this life.
Yep. Life isn't meant to be easy. It's hard. It's a hard walk. But it helps when you have people to ride it with you, and, you know, you have God with you. So,
and we'll be your community, like we said. So you guys already know where you could find us. Like I said, we'll put our email here. So please feel free to reach out. Don't forget to follow us, like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what it is that you guys want to see more of. Let us know what it is that you guys want to talk about. We want to hear from you. We want this to be an open communication with all of you. So
yes, and we will be starting, let's post more questions and things like that, so you guys can ask us and we can answer. And it was great today.
Thank you guys for joining us and sitting through that super emotional episode. We love you.
Bye.